Well, hello and welcome. This is the WWW, the Weekly Wellness Wednesday. We want to welcome everyone, whether you're on this call live or whether you're catching this after the fact. It's just as relevant, just as powerful. We want to welcome you. I will be one of your co-hosts. I'm Robert Arthur here in my home office in beautiful Granbury, Texas. And I'm joined by my co-host,
Mr. Jim Rhodes, in the finally rainy state of Utah, which is something we need a lot of. And boy, am I excited about tonight's call.
Yeah, you and I both. And that's almost a miracle. It's raining in St. George. My goodness. So,
that is a miracle. A lot of people are either paying their tithing early or praying hard because the poor farmers are suffering here. It hasn't rained very much. We can't expect a whole lot because it is the high desert here in St. George.
That's a good point. So wherever you're joining us, I'm in Texas, Jim's up in the high desert, and we're about to tell you where our guest speaker is tonight. Before we go there, Jim, we've been doing these interviews with some amazing people inside and out, just authentic, raw, real, heart-centered servant leaders for about 6-7 months now. Do we have an ever expanding library of these resources to plug into?
Absolutely. That's what's phenomenal. There are so many, well, everybody has their own story and their own journey. The uniqueness is how many things we've covered from someone as young as 18 up to seasoned doctors and people who have been in that industry for 30, 40 years themselves. And there's such a wide spectrum of those. As you review them, things that they will say will apply to different audiences. And that's what's unique about this evergreen they can draw from.
Very much so. And just so we want to promote that as well. And you can, if you're on this page, Facebook page, you can just type in www and see our interviews. We also have an ever-growing library on our YouTube channel as well. It's Team Z and then Global Impact, and you can see the interviews we've done there. So Jim, shall we introduce our guest speaker this evening?
Yes, this good doctor who has a journey that's beautiful, expanding, and so full of knowledge. As I've gotten to know him, I just sit and hang on the things that he shares because he's always teaching me new principles and things. And I think people will get a lot out of what he has to share with us. He likes to go by Dr. David. And I'll let you introduce his full name because I know I'll mispronounce the last name.
Dr. David Kamnitzer. Hope I'm pronouncing that right, Dr. David. And
accents on the first syllable.
Okay.
Kamnitzer.
Kamnitzer. Okay,
there
gotcha.
You go.
And awesome. He hails from beautiful San Jose, California, there on the West Coast here in the States, the US. And he has been in private practice, holistic chiropractor, and a health educator, which is, as you'll see tonight, Dr. David, you have a passion and a deep desire to really impart knowledge, not just practice it or live it. You actually love to teach, as well as being a vital part of that whole awakening and healing breakthrough process in people's lives. He also, on a very personal note, a loving hubby, and also he has 2 adult sons, Jonathan, who's 35, and also Michael, who's now 31, and grandsons hopefully on the way. So we'll be talking about that as we do future calls together. And what comes to mind on a heart level, this gentleman he's so authentic. He is all about pursuing, again, the pursuit of helping to co-create that next level wellness in others. And he walks his walk and he talks his talk as well. So Dr. David, welcome.
Thank you. It's an honor, privilege to be with you and be with everyone who's watching or listening, and to have the opportunity to share some of what I've learned along the way.
Awesome. And it is an honor and a privilege, isn't it? So, and for those showing up, we're so grateful for each and every one of you. Thank you. So, one of my key questions, just to kind of start the insights into the journey, one of my questions, I'm curious, I know I hadn't asked yet, and we've been yakking all the time and chatting and connecting. So one of my questions was, did you have any key role models in your life that were in the healing arts or in a wellness practice? Kind of what led you years ago into that field or work?
Well, do you have about 4 hours? I mean, wow.
That's a loaded question, isn't it?
What a first question. Okay. Let me see how I can distill this so that people can go to sleep tonight. The short answer is yes, is that I've been graced by some phenomenal teachers on just about every level. I think there's an old expression in spirituality that I think you'll relate to, that says the call compels the answer.
Wow.
The call compels the answer. And I think one of my, I don't know if you call it a strength or just my nature, is that I have a passion to, if it's in an area of expertise of mine, I have a passion to not only know what works, but to understand the first principles behind why something works. And so that passion to master something that I care about, so that I'm not just a recipe follower. Not that I have anything against discipline or following recipes, but there's a time and a place for that, but you're never going to become a master chef just by following the recipe. You kind of have to follow the recipe enough to find out what it can do and what it can't do, and then you take what works and then you move on. So I think my passion for knowing truth and sharing it in a way that other people can use it in a way that produces practical value. I think I'm a practical visionary. I think I see things that other people don't see, and then I look at how to apply something that I understand, a principle, something I see, and then I look at how to apply it in my own life, and how to translate that principle into conversations and actions that can meet people where they are, but at the same time challenge them to maybe stretch the boundaries a little bit.
Mhm.
And so I kind of entered the healing arts through the back door. I may have shared this story with you. Is when I was a child, and even a younger adolescent, I had questions that most children and adolescents don't have. And I didn't even have the words for these questions at the time, but they were present, they were vital, they were alive. But if I were to put words on them now, looking back, I would say there were two questions that I was on fire to understand. And question number one was, if God is such a loving God, how come, and so powerful, how come in this world there's so much pain? How come there's so much suffering? How come there's so many bad things?
Don't you think so many of us have asked that question?
Sure. But I was asking that question in a very passionate, committed way, where I wasn't committed to a particular answer. I was really committed to living inside that question for however long it took to get satisfactory answer. And then the other question that was kind of a corollary to that question that was driving me was, how come some people are so healthy and happy and successful? And how come some people are so unhealthy, unhappy, and unsuccessful? And so it's interesting because both of those questions, if I look back on them now, the key that answers those questions to my satisfaction, what the answer to both of those questions have in common is the joker in the deck, which is human free will. And when you understand the role of human free will in a larger context of God or spirituality, I think it can start to come together in a way that is very appropriate for today's world, and especially for those of us that have grown up in Western civilization and the United States, which puts such a high value on the sovereignty of the individual. I don't think it's an accident that so much innovation. I mean, there's a lot of things wrong with our country, but one of the things that's right about our country is that bright people from all over the world come to the United States to tap into that spirit of innovation and creativity. And it's in our DNA as Americans, the sovereignty of the individual. Of course, there's an enormous responsibility that goes with that kind of autonomy and freedom and power. And we're learning some tough lessons around that right now. But if you want to really know me at a deeper level, I think the things that I've said are helpful. That these were the questions that drove me into wherever life took me. And where it originally took me was into a deep dive into psychology, philosophy, comparative religions, to really try to get a big picture, so that I could look at things like my family of origin or the country I was born in or the culture I was raised in, that I could look at those things from a bigger objective frame so that I could see things other people couldn't see, so that I could have a sense of what are our strengths, what are our blind spots, what are our weaknesses. And so, so obviously what I was really about that I didn't know I was about was to try to understand human being. You know, what is a human being? What makes a human being tick? What are the conditions necessary for a human being to thrive, and vice versa? So those kinds of things were really driving me. And I got to a point in my understanding of human being where I understood that I had a big blind spot. And that was that I didn't know that much about the physical body. I knew a lot about the mind. I knew a lot about the soul. But I realized that if I really wanted to understand human beings, myself and others, because we're so multidimensional, that I needed to have a much, much more profound understanding of the human body, human anatomy, human physiology, what can go wrong. And so as I began to get into that, because I was coming from a spiritual frame, I was seeing this miracle of the human body as like God's most amazing creation ever. And so that was an interesting slant on all of that. And as I got more of a objective viewpoint about the strengths and weaknesses of our culture, I could see that our culture was basically hypnotized into what is considered to be scientific materialism. The idea that the only thing that's real is what can be measured, and that everything that's metaphysical is just an epiphenomenon of that which is physical. And, you know, that way of looking at life can build you a computer, and get you to the moon, but that way of life isn't going to leave you peaceful. That way of looking at life isn't going to leave you with great relationships. That way of looking at life may not leave you with a healthy planet and a healthy body and healthy soil. And so I started to become attracted to healing arts that came from philosophies that didn't come from scientific materialism. I started to get attracted to healing philosophies like Ayurveda, Chinese medicine, chiropractic, which comes from another place, which comes from the idea that spirit and energy and frequencies are primary, and that what we can measure is limited by our measuring devices and is constantly changing. And it becomes obvious that that way of looking at life has tremendous limitations. Like, for example, X-rays weren't quote unquote discovered until the latter part of the 1800s. But does that mean that X-rays didn't exist before that time? I mean, so it's a very egocentric way of looking at things, and it can only take you so far. And I'm grateful for what that way of looking at the world can give you, but I'm also keenly aware of the externalities of that way of, if that's your only way of being, if that's your only way of seeing, you're not going to be what I consider truly healthy. You're not going to be what I consider truly happy. You're not going to be what I consider truly successful. You're not going to be what I consider a wise person. You're not going to be what I consider a healer. You're not going to be what I consider to be a servant leader. And the problem with looking at everything that way, that objectifying everything, is that without knowing it, you end up objectifying yourself. And you end up objectifying other people. And that's a ladder, that's a wall that I don't want my ladder up against.
Yes. And
you know,
so that journey, obviously you've spent decades, and in that environment, in that arena. And then at the same time, you said you were in practice as a chiropractor for what, 35 years?
Yeah, because I'm 66. And
Yes.
so by the time I got to chiropractic college in 1984, I was already 28 years old.
Okay.
So I had this broad background going into that deep dive into what I was talking about. And so what I've always been about, and it became clear to me looking back, is that, and this ties into the practical visionary thing, is that I'm really about two things. I realize that now in my 60s, that I'm really about freeing the body and I'm really about freeing the soul.
Okay.
And what I found is that in today's world, the body is so out of whack. And because we're multidimensional, that out of whackness of the body makes it really, really hard to be able to get quiet enough and still enough and peaceful enough to be able to really do the deep work that's required to free the soul. And people who attempt to free the soul, who are in denial about the body, in my experience, come up against some significant limitations as well. And so I guess like any visionary person would do, is I tend to live in what I call the gap. In other words, I'm keenly aware of what's right in front of me. And I'm keenly aware of my sense of what's possible. And then I live within that gap. And to fill that gap, you have to always be aware of the limiting factor that's creating the gap. In other words, you have to be aware of the weakest link.
Mhm.
And so if you look at kind of like freeing the body, freeing the soul, it's kind of like that. It's like if you just pay attention to the body, you'll only go so far. If you're just paying attention to the soul, you'll only go so far because of the multidimensional nature of existence and of human being. And I consider it a tremendous privilege that I've had the opportunity to do a deep dive in understanding the soul and in understanding the body and in understanding, I'm good at pattern recognition. So it's like I can kind of see how they mix together and I start to see patterns that other people don't see.
Mhm.
And I've always had a gift for teaching, and I can think and I can speak and I can write. And so I always knew as a child, I always knew I had a gift for teaching, but it came as a surprise to me in my early 20s when I started getting involved in some of the more energetically based healing arts. It came as a pleasant surprise to me that I also had a gift with healing. I also had a gift, my ability to sense energy and impact energy. That was something that was totally off the menu for me as a child, because the environment I grew up in was totally locked into the allopathic model without even knowing there was anything outside of it.
Mhm.
And so growing up, I had no desire to be a doctor because I had no desire to specialize in pharmaceutical drugs or in doing surgery, which that's what I thought being a doctor was. So it's something that I wasn't even on the map for me as a possibility. So I slipped into being a doctor through the back door.
And was there an awareness? Obviously, your immersion in the soul, psychology, the spirit self, the energy. So when did you gain and see more of the impact of nutrition, supplementation, to bring us around to this conversation? So when did that come into play? And then obviously,
I think as I became more sensitive in myself and energetically, it became obvious to me that when I was consuming vital, alive, unadulterated foods, because of my sensitivity to energy, there was just an immediate impact in vitality, in sense of well-being, in sense of harmony with the elements and with the earth. And I realized after a while that the ritual of eating is very profound, because it's our main way, it's our main ritual that connects the human being to the elements and to Mother Earth.
Okay.
And it also can be a consolidating time for families to gather. And that's something that's really been lost. That I think we pay a price for that we don't even know, for
yes,
example.
and there's so many. Speaking of, our spiritual journey, look at almost any spiritual teachings, and it involves some kind of breaking of bread. There's all kinds of references to that, even spiritually. So
not only that, but references to, this is going to be apropos to some of the things we'll get into either in this conversation or a future one, is if you study different religious texts, there's definitely a commonality also involved in fasting.
yeah, that's a big one. And, and that's almost in every teaching almost.
And,
So,
and there was in many traditions, there was more of a reverence for the elements and for the land, you know, like cultures that have been around for a long time had to figure it out. They had to figure out that you don't plant the same thing year after year after year after year after year, that you have to give the soil a break. You have to do different things. And, we didn't, I think the whole idea of human beings having dominion got a little bastardized into thinking that somehow we could rape the earth and get away with it. And that goes back to the objectification of everything. And that goes back to the limitation of the scientific materialist view of the world. And we're getting some really tough lessons right now on many, many fronts. And if I were to have to distill what the take-home opportunity is for human beings to learn right now, would be to discern their place in the universe and to discern what is truly valuable, as opposed to the bill of goods that people are trying to sell each other all the time. And I think that is a really good segue into Zalevo, because Zalevo has an uncompromising commitment to developing, to innovating, and then to inventing, and then innovating, and then sharing with others true value. And the challenge is that when you're dealing with a jaded culture that has kind of lost their sense of true north and their sense of true value, and are untrusting, rightly so, I think the difference that will make the difference for us is, because we have the value, will be how to build that bridge of trust and understanding into a world that is so stressed out and so jaded and so hypnotized into the latest shiny object that many people don't recognize true value. I mean, people could be walking right next to Jesus Christ and never know it. So there's that kind of asleepness and lack of attunement to true value and true quality that I think is our challenge and our opportunity here. And the thing we have with Zalevo is that we have, thanks to Kirsty primarily, I think. And
for those, pardon me, but for those listening, Kirsty is our director of product development. She's the head of our labs team. She pulls together all this team of incredible gifted individuals from all over the planet to innovate, as Dr. David was saying. And Dr. David, that was one of your main, speaking of relationships and connecting on the deeper level, Kirsty is probably one of the primary reasons, well, she is, why you're here initially. And then through that relationship and the trust, knowing her approach to life, much less formulations in the team. So it wasn't that long ago you were introduced to Zalevo.
Yeah. Well, just to complete the thought that I was having, is I was going to say, thanks to the gift of Kirsty Cody and the CEO who trusted her enough and gave her the resources to do her thing, we have an extremely, I'm not just talking like a guy in a diner right now that thinks they know something about everything. I'm talking about now in my area of expertise, is I can recognize quality in my area of expertise at a very high level. I mean, you can imagine literally how many thousands of products have been given me to look at over 35 years. So I think I've earned the right to talk about this, is that Kirsty's put together a foundational roadmap for physical health that is not only extremely high quality, but I'll get into this later, it's extremely elegant in its synergy, such that myself and other clinicians have found that when we introduce the Levo products to really firm up the foundation of wellness, that it reduces dramatically the number of other specialty and specifically targeted products that we need in order to accomplish what we want to accomplish with our patients. And, you know, I like you said, I'm a teacher. I'd rather teach a person to fish than have them keep coming back to me to buy fish. And so I believe that about 80% of what we do as health educators and healers is well, first of all, we are a living example of what we're talking about. But I think what we do is inspire and educate people to do the part that they have to do. And a huge part of what they have to do, if they really want to have high level wellness, is they have to have really good nutrition without too many calories. They need a way to detoxify and get rid of cells and materials and energy that are no longer appropriate for them. They need energy. They need a way to handle stress. They need things to keep their appearance and their connective tissue in good shape. And in order to do that, you need a product that will give people the nutrition they need in a way that doesn't produce an abundance of calories or carbs especially. You need to have things that help people to be able to physiologically and psychologically give the body the rest that it needs to help it to cleanse. You need to support the brain and the endocrine system, the hormonal system, because people are so stressed out. And you need to help provide with some energy, and then you need to address the gut. You need to address the microbiome. The average layperson has no conception of the relationship between the gut. They think about it as far as digestion goes, but they don't think about it in terms of its relationship to hormones, neurotransmitters, immunity. It's a huge deal. And so when you look at it from that perspective, it's pretty amazing the value that we have. And then, you know, people are rightly so very concerned about wanting to be good stewards of their money these days. And so the fact that all of our products can be sold with a no questions asked 30-day money back guarantee, I think in today's world is really big. And many people don't want to be dependent on their doctor. And I don't want people to be dependent on the doctor. I feel like if you're familiar with the 80-20 rule, I'm a firm believer in that. And one of the things that can burn a doctor out is if a doctor's doing the 80% that the patient really should do. Because really what we need in natural healing is we really need a committed partnership on both ends. And I can't eat for you. I can't think for you. I can't make your choices about whether you'll get some early morning sun. I can't control how much water you drink. I can't control the music you listen to or the television programs you watch or how you use your power of speech. I can't control that. I can model it, I can advise, but there's no specialty product I can give that will make up for terrible choices in all of these other areas. And it's time that we tell the truth about that and allow doctors to be doctors again, and have financial incentives where there's a partnership between the patient and the doctor that doesn't involve an insurance company. And it's a partnership where basically people are paying you to help them be well. Whereas our current system financially incentivizes the opposite. And we're getting to a point where it's becoming obvious that as a society, we can't afford that dysfunction anymore. And so Zalevo, you're talking about living in the gap. Zalevo, if you're living in that gap, you see that Zalevo, talking about true value, that Zalevo provides true value and plays a part in filling that gap. And like I mentioned, it also frees up the doctor to be the doctor. Like, for example, there's no reason that the doctor should have to take the time to go over everything that can be covered as well or better through videos that are on the Zalevo website. So in that sense, it also empowers the patient and also lets the doctor focus on the 20% that is not reasonable to expect a layperson to be able to handle. So the whole idea of the partnership between the doctor and the patient, I really like that synergy. And I think it matches the potential synergy that's fostered by the Zalevo business model. I think so. In a way, we're being and walking our talk. We're being what we're talking about, and I like that. I think that's how people really learn. There's an old expression: "Who you are speaks so loudly, people can't hear what you're saying."
Yeah, that's
a
valid point.
Yeah. So I like it from that perspective. I really like it from the legal perspective as a doctor. The fact that there are legal restrictions in many states, for example, on whether a doctor can have a network marketing type conversation with the patient, even outside of the office. And so the fact that Zalevo structures its business in such a way that there's a clear boundary with the VIPs as opposed to the business builders, not only does the Federal Trade Commission really like that, but it's really good for many reasons from a doctor's perspective as well. And it really avoids the downside of the network marketing conversation that you would otherwise have to have with a doctor if you were wanting to introduce this to a doctor. So I think there's a lot of benefits there. And unless you, it's like a wine, so unless you really know your wines, you can't appreciate a $200 bottle of wine. You might as well have a $10 bottle of wine. Well, if you can't really appreciate the science and the art of nutrition, you probably really can't appreciate Zalevo products. In that same vein, because the level of thought that not only Kirsty put into each individual product and the extent to which she went to for quality control with each product, but also the care and thought of how she put the thing together with how the product synergized. There's no way that it's reasonable to expect a layperson to have any sense of that level of excellence. And, but we can know it. We can know it. And we can stand on that knowledge. And even though it's not necessarily appropriate to share that with everybody, just standing on that rock gives you a place to stand that is really, really powerful and really unusual. Like I would challenge people to find at any price, let alone a fair price. I would challenge someone to take months, travel the world, go online, go in the real world, and find something that compares to our shake. You're not going to find it. You're just not going to find it. And putting together that complex of product and have it work is really hard because one bad apple can spoil the bunch. You know, if you have an ingredient that doesn't resonate with the others, it can blow the whole meal. And so maybe something I can contribute that's unique is because of my depth of knowledge and my depth of experience, both clinically and understanding clinical nutrition and therapeutic nutrition. I can put my reputation on the line and say that I don't think I could find a better shake through any professional line. I don't think I could find a better shake at any price. And it's no small deal to be able to offer somebody that will, in today's world, that will nourish them. People are starving for real, getting back to the theme of today, people are starving for real value. People, and they don't even know it. They're starving for real nourishment. But even if you don't know that you're looking for that, when you have it and you've experienced it, something changes.
It does. And to be candid, one of the stories that Jim and I tell all the time since we've been connecting with you more frequently, just to kind of on a fun note, is we say, hey, this is a paraphrase, but you won't believe one of our new wellness partners, you know, a great man, authentic man, chiropractor of many, many years, holistic. He did this energy test when the shake came into his office. And and we share it all the time. I'd love for you to comment.
Yeah. Okay. So as I mentioned earlier, one of the gifts that I didn't know that I had till I got into the arena was that I was able to sense energy, and therefore I was attracted to things that took advantage of that gift, being able to sense chakras and balance them, being able to find acupuncture points easily, being able to sense energy fields. And so I gravitated to healing arts that leverage those abilities. And so I do a lot of very sophisticated muscle response testing where I can see real time. No, I don't see them. I'm not clairvoyant, but I can feel it. I can sense immediate real time changes in the energy field. And so sometimes I check energy fields around products, and I check the impact of when you put a product in close to a human, there's an interaction between the energy field of the human and the energy field of the product, and I can see what happens there. And so when I got the shakes, I tested the energy field around the bag of the shake. And to make a long story short, most good products for me will have an energy field of maybe like 2 or 3 feet if they're really good products. And the energy field around the bag of the shake was 7 feet in every direction. And I'm not saying that I can tell you exactly all the physical and metaphysical reasons why, but I can definitely tell you, you know, swearing on my mother's grave, I can tell you that the energy field around that shake was 7 feet in every direction. And then when I had the person hold it, obviously there was an amplification and a balancing of the field. And then don't want to get too much in the weeds here, but by having them hold the shake, I was able to demonstrate within the context of what I was doing with the patients, I was able to demonstrate what I was mentioning earlier, that people needed less other stuff. And that's a big deal because people have a limited amount of money they can spend on things, and you don't want to create a therapeutic regimen for a patient that even if they can afford it, it's unwieldy. You know, you don't want people to have to take 10 or 12 other things, right? Even if they need it, the compliance will go down, even if they can afford it. And so this is part of the elegance of the solution that really attracts me. And then I would say, maybe toward wrapping it up, I would say the other thing that people don't know necessarily what they're missing and the price they're paying for it, and it's part of recognizing true value, is being an integral active part of a community of people that have shared values and shared standards and to a large extent shared worldviews. I mean, we could go way down the rabbit hole, and I don't want to do that tonight, but suffice it to say that there are forces in the universe that don't want us to do that. There's forces in the universe that want to do more of a divide and conquer thing right now. And so to be able to find your tribe, so to speak, where who you are is honored, your contribution is honored, the whole is honored, the mission is honored, other people are honored, the soul is honored, the body's honored, honor is honored, virtue is honored. If you've never experienced that, you don't know what you're missing. It's just like physical well-being. If you've never experienced what it's like to really have your cells singing, you don't know what you're missing. Your normal is not normal. You know, most people's normal is statistically average, but that's not normal. And if you conflate being statistically average with normal, you're lost. You've lost true north, and that's a big problem if you want the things, if you want the good life, so to speak. And so, you know, I think one of the things that is sort of the hidden treasure of Zalebo, and is part of the theme of tonight about true value, is real friendships that are based on deeply shared values is something that in today's world, to be able to be part of that kind of a culture when the larger culture is going through such a period of rapid breakdown is not only valuable, but if you want to be a peak performer, it's almost essential. And so I would say that in terms of the theme of the title for tonight, why I'm so excited, I attempted to organize my thoughts today around the answer to that question, is to come at it from many different angles about why I'm so excited. And one thing I'd be interested in before we close it out, because I have so much respect for you guys, is, if anything that I've said tonight has sparked your own thoughts and ideas to build on what I've said to enhance the call, I'd love it. Even if we go over a little bit, I'd love to have you guys, if the spirit's moving in you guys at all to share anything. We could always edit it out later if it's getting too long, but I think it would really add to the meal. Because I think
Since you've invited me, I am going to jump in and tell you that what you shared tonight is music to my ears. When I realized, after I had also been introduced to these incredible formulas and what they can do for the human body when put in there with all the building blocks that are possible, a delivery system that takes them in, something to help get out those things that are creating havoc with the body and lowering inflammation, which is one of the biggest problems that we have. And an antioxidant count, so it's helping with oxidative stress, which creates that inflammation in the first place. I remember waking up at 4 a.m. in the morning, sitting straight up, saying, I don't even know if they know what they've got. They have truly found a fountain of youth and found a way to activate it, the one that's inside of us, with these super formulations. And community, oh, I am so 100% in agreement with you. When you find other people in a community like this that supports everyone and has that heart of servant leadership that you have, you feel, oh, I've come home. So yes, this information that you've shared tonight truly resonates with my heart. I know with Robert's. So thank you for sharing.
My pleasure.
Yes, thank you, Dr. David and Jim. Again, for those listening, probably most of you know this, Jim, again, 5 decades, many years as well, and nutritional science and coaching, teaching, formulation, guiding communities, along with Dr. David as well. And my big reminder from what you've shared from your heart to those listening tonight, Dr. David and Jim, was the fact that, number one, that there's so much more to life than your physical body, and a pathway to that joy, fulfillment, happiness, beautiful relationships. We can go on from there. It's you want a happy spirit and soul, then you got to feed the body as well. So that was a big reminder. Thank you for that. And we have a beautiful way to do that. And second, when you do find your tribe and community on a shared mission, as many reminders come down from us have been taught through the centuries and as long as we've been on this planet, that's everything rises. Everything rises. It elevates everything. So and you elevate our community as well just by being here. So speaking of elevating energy, guys, with your permission, let's just honor those who showed up tonight as well, Dr. David and Jim. So Julie, thanks for being here. She said she needed all the inspiration, Dr. David. So thank you. Thank you, Julie. Love and light. Kathy's on human free will. It makes total sense. Knowledge is power. Yeah, and media often leads people astray. That's one big takeaway. Reminder for her. Thank you, Dr. David, for that. Scott, Lucas, Julie, again, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make him drink. I think, Dr. David, you mentioned that one. We are what we eat. Jill Berth, love and light. Heidi shared a beautiful thought. Heidi up in Minnesota. The world is desperate for true healing, and for the large majority, this is a beautiful, beautiful answer. And thank you for your authenticity, she said. Thank you to Dr. David and Jim. Debbie Cartwright. So thank you all. Nicole, thank you for all being here. And for those I'm not seeing here, we want to thank you for showing up and doing what most people on this planet simply don't choose to do, Dr. David and Jim. I'm sure you can relate. They don't act on their health, wellness, nutrition, much less they're learning and seeking wisdom. So again, we've said a lot tonight, and we'll have more conversations, I'm sure, as we move forward on this journey. And when Nicole said she's crying, and which is a beautiful place to be, because as you open up your heart, thank you for that. So Dr. David, I love your soul and spirit and why you're here. Is there a closing thought, even a possible call to action as we wind up this conversation?
I would say the call to action would be to really pay attention to the impact of the products in your own body and in your own life, because there's nothing that takes the place of awareness and being able to share from your direct experience. Most people are simply not oriented internally enough to really pay attention to what is actually happening in their body and in their energy and in their perceptions. And it's worth tracking, you know, if I've gained any trust here today, maybe I can use that trust bank account to encourage you to pay attention. You know, a lot of genius, what genius is a lot of, is just paying attention to things that other people don't pay attention to long enough. That you see things and you discover things that just other people, they're just not paying attention to those things. And I can't tell you how challenging it is today, given the variety and types of external input that's being input that you're exposed to energetically and informationally 24/7, that if you don't take dominion over your own consciousness and choose where you're going to put your attention, it probably won't be a pretty picture. And I want to encourage you to really take your power back, and nobody outside of you has the power to determine what you value and where you put your focus and what you put your attention on. And from my perspective, most people major in the minors. And you've got to be able to know the difference between the majors and the minors, and then you've got to use your free will to choose to major in the majors. And from my life experience, there's nothing that takes the place of being a good steward of your own energy, tracking your own energy. Like, gee, you know, when I'm around this person, how do I feel? You know, not what's my judgment about them, but how do I feel? What's the impact it's having on me? When I'm watching this television show, how do I feel? How's the energy in my body? When I'm taking this product, when I'm eating this food, when I'm reading this book, when I'm thinking this thought, when I'm considering going down this road as opposed to that road, what's happening to my energy? And being able to track it, because if you can, it's so much easier to experiment on that level than to have to go down a dead end road for years before you realize it was a dead end road, you know. And so I think to know the true value of what you have in your hands and not just believe it, but to know it, I would say make it a higher priority to pay attention and track your own energy in relation to these products, and track your own energy in relation to how you feel now as opposed to how you felt an hour ago. And none of this is an accident. And the better steward you are of your own focus and your own energy, it'll come back to you 1,000-fold.
Wow, so many points there. I have to listen to this recall again. Well, I would choose to do that. How's that? So, because it's definitely creating a higher energy and vibration in me. And thank you for being energetically drawn here and for raising the vibration and what we all do. And we are on a mission, Dr. David, and along with Jem and everybody watching this, and whether you're watching the recording alive, we are on a mission. And there is tremendous energy in that and tremendous good we're doing. Speaking of that, it may seem corny to some, but we do it. So I'm going to do, you can just say it, or Jim and I will yell at Dr. David, but we can be that sometimes, but we're going to do force for good. So 1, 2.
What do we do? What are we going to do?
We're going to yell out force for good.
Force
Okay.
for good.
It's
All
all,
right.
it's all 1, 2, 3.
Force
for
for
good.
I-
Thank you,
Love and
Dr.
light.
David. You are a
Thank you,
force
Dr.
for
David.
good. Thank you, Robert.
Take care, you
Amazing.
guys. Thanks again for the opportunity to share.
Well, it was
Love and
us who
light.
got blessed. Thank you. I hope people took good notes.
They're all raving about it. They're all, yelling at as well and crying as well. So you created so many emotions. Thank you. Thank you, guys.
Send me a can you send me a printout of the comments later?
Actually, I can even direct you even where to find them. So
Okay.
yeah, it's all good. So I will do that happily. And
Thanks.
so again, we're so grateful. Thank you for your time. Thanks, everybody.
Take
Bye-bye.
Good
care.
night, everyone.
Bye.
Good night.